Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is the 7th of November and I finished my first read for the month. This was actually a recommendation from Rachel Marie from Rachel Marie's book journey. She did a really good interesting vlog where she read I think 5 middle grade, which I will put up here. And one of the books she had a really strong reaction to, made her cry, made her really emotional, and so I thought it was worth checking out because one of my favourite series of the year was recommended by her, which is the Wayward Children series, which I am 2 books into, by Seanan McGuire. So I thought, well, if she's had that strong a reaction to a book, I should probably check it out. Plus it's a middle grade and I want to read more middle grade books, and I'm looking for a book for a project for next year and I thought it might fit for that. So I picked it up, and that book is The Land of Yesterday by K.A. Reynolds. So first of all, let's just look at this cover because it's stunning, and there's also really beautiful illustrations inside. I will read you the back because this book is quite complicated, and yeah, it's probably just easier if I just read you part of the back. I won't read the whole thing. After Celia Dar's little brother Celadon dies tragically, his soul goes where all souls go, the land of yesterday. Now Cecilia's beloved house spirit is crumbling beyond repair, her father is imprisoned by sorrow, and worst of all, her grief-stricken mother abandons the land of the living to follow Celadon. I hope I'm saying her brother's name correctly. So we're following Cecilia, who's 11. She is dealing with grief, she's dealing with guilt, she is dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, she is dealing with the grief of her parents, her mother's depression, and she basically goes on this adventure to try and rescue her mother and her father, and it's really good. I've given it 4 stars. It's very whimsical. It sort of reminded me a little bit of Coraline because it's middle grade with that kind of darker edge to it. There is some serious Alice in Wonderland vibes. There's references to the Wizard of Oz. It didn't surprise me at all when I looked up the author to see that she's a poet because it's written really beautifully. It's very lyrical. It's very descriptive. There are obviously magical elements to it. It's set in this kind of, is it a fantasy world? I'm never quite sure how to describe it, but she does mention Earth in passing, and she kind of sees it on the map of the stars and she can see Earth, which is obviously a separate planet from hers. So yeah, it's this very magical, whimsical book. It's things like her hair has got a mind of its own, it does its own thing, and I really enjoyed that. I also really liked the way that mental health was dealt with in this book. I thought it was really positive and a really good way of starting a conversation with kids. I didn't have the emotional response to it that Rachel did, but that's fine. I still very much enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm going to give it 4 stars. I would read more. There's a second one. I don't think it's a series, but there's another one from this author, which I will be looking at soon. And yeah, thanks for the recommendation, Rachel. I really enjoyed it. It is the 9th of November and I have just finished my next read for the month, which was The Plea by Cavanagh. My reading's been kind of slow this week. I haven't been very well, but I have finished this. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Given it 4 stars. It's the second in the Eddie Flynn series. You see the cat behind me. Yeah, it's the second in the Eddie Flynn series. I read the first one, which was The Defence, on honeymoon in May. I read 13, which is actually book 4 in the series, last year, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And then this is book 2, so I've got 1 more book to read so far in the series. This one follows Eddie Flynn, who is a lawyer in New York. He is forced to take the case of a man who all of the evidence says has killed his girlfriend. And Eddie is forced into that because the FBI are saying that if he doesn't take this case, they will put Flynn's wife in jail because she has accidentally committed a fraud. So that's the setup. Really enjoyed this. Eddie Flynn is kind of a Sherlock Holmes-esque type character in that he puts things together really quickly. He sees things that other people don't necessarily notice. And it's just very clever and very slick. I think the reason I haven't given it 5 is because I worked out the main twist fairly early on, but there were others I didn't see coming. And also the pace was a little bit slow in some places, but overall I would really recommend this. If you're looking for an easy read thriller that's clever, I'd recommend this. And also if you're new to the genre, I think these books are good because there is some violence and couple of deaths and things, but it's not like super graphic. It's not like a Karen slaughter. So if you're looking to get into this genre, I would really recommend these. I don't usually like kind of police procedural or courtroom dramas, but there's just something about this writing that's so charming and that just keeps me turning the pages that I'm really looking forward to reading the next one basically as soon as I can pick it up. So yeah, really recommend it. It's the 11th of November. I am back in my car. As you can hear from my voice, it's very early in the morning. It's like 7:30. I've got 2 books to talk about because I actually finished one book last night, which was Sunday, and then I finished another book on my way in this morning on my commute. So the first book that I finished was my classic for the month, and it was Goodnight, Mr. Tom by Michelle Marrigan. I think I'm saying that right. Magorian, maybe? Honestly, it smashed my heart to bits. I read this before. I read this as a kid and again as a teen, and it's classified as a children's classic, but man, it covers some really tough topics. There's also a BBC adaptation. I think it was a TV series, maybe in the 90s or early noughties, starring John Thor, I think, and that used to make me sob as well. The basic story is that we're following a young guy called William when he is evacuated during World War II from London to this little village, and he goes to live with Mr. Tom, and it's about their friendship and their relationship, but it's also about the trauma that William has suffered before he gets there. It's about what happens when he has to go back home, and yeah, it's brutal. I mean, it's one of those weird books where it's so beautifully written and it's really easy to read. It's over 400 pages, so for a children's classic, it's a chunker. But I flew through it, read it really quickly. But it doesn't shy away from the reality of the topics that it's talking about. And I really like how honest it is, especially for a children's book, because I think sometimes we gloss over these things with kids, and actually they've reached a point where they need to know what's going on in the world. Also, it's great representation, I think, if a child was reading this who'd been through similar things, and it's important to have those stories told. I do have to give trigger warnings for abuse, physical and mental and emotional abuse, also for suicide and also for death. It doesn't shy away from the reality of the Blitz in London during the war and the war in general, but it's also this beautiful story about friendship and trust and love, and I adored it, even though it made me sob 3 separate times. It made me sob, I won't say when because it's spoilers, but it made me sob because I was just heartbroken for what one of the characters had been through. It then made me cry again, out of just relief and happiness, and then I also ended up crying because I felt grief because of something that happened in the book towards the end. So it was a real roller coaster of emotions. I've given it 5 stars. It's definitely one of my favourite children's classics that I've read this year, and I would really recommend it, but just know what the topics are before you go in, because it, like I said, it doesn't pull its punches. And yeah, and also look how beautiful this edition is. I do love these Penguin children's classic hardbacks, although it does get a little bit worn on the edges, which is kind of annoying, but that's just me. But yeah, I would highly recommend this book. Then the other book that I've just finished is at the other end of the scale, and that is The Twisted Ones by Kingfisher. I listened to it on Scribd. It's a horror, or it's marketed as a horror. I picked it up because Harriet mentioned on Twitter that she was going to read it, and also Laura from What Everyone Else Is Reading. It's on her most anticipated reads for winter. Wow, what is the light doing? There we go. I think it was on her latest most anticipated reads. So Laura, sorry if you're watching this. I really didn't like this book. I've given it 2 stars. And if I'd been reading it physically, I would definitely have DNF'd it. I don't know what it is about audiobooks. Does anybody else find this? I just find it really hard to DNF audiobooks. I mean, even the other book that I finished on audio that I didn't like was Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantaro, which I read in August, and again I kind of hate listening to that because for some reason I feel like I don't want to put it down just because it's on audio, which is weird. I knew I wasn't enjoying this because I started listening to it on 1.5 speed, which I don't usually do. I generally listen just on 1 speed, like normal speed, and I started listening to it on 1.5 just to get through it. The basic story is that we're following a woman who is clearing out her grandmother's house after her grandmother has died, and then while she is doing that, weird stuff starts happening. And that's all I can say without giving spoilers. But yeah, I just found this really dull. There's a couple of like creepy bits. It really wasn't scary. I felt like there were plot holes that Hagrid could stand up in. There was a lot of telling rather than showing, which I really hate, because it removes you from the action. And I think that was the main problem, was I just didn't care what was happening because I didn't care about the character particularly, and I just wasn't into the story. So yeah, that's the two extremes. So I've given a 5-star and a 2-star in 24 hours. Yeah, sorry. Twisted Ones, absolutely not for me. I think Harriet gave it 3 stars, although I've not seen her wrap up yet. That was just on GoodReads. Yeah, disappointing. If you've got any properly creepy book recommendations, like scary books, I would love to read something really scary. Weirdly, I don't like scary films, but scary books I'm into. So yeah, if you've got any recommendations. I'm currently rereading The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell, which you'll see in a few clips time, I'm sure, and I'm really enjoying that. And part of what I'm really enjoying is how scary it is, because especially on a reread, when you know what's happening, I'm finding it really creepy. So yeah, if you've got any scary book recommendations, let me know. And honestly, the lion here is driving me insane, so there we go. I'm gonna go to work now. But yeah, those are the thoughts on 2 books that I've read in the last 24 hours. It is the 14th of November, and I don't think it's showing up on the camera behind me, but it's snowing, which is not ideal. Thankfully it's too wet for it to stick, but I'm out on appointments all day today, so I can really do without it. But anyway, that is not why I am filming this clip. So I finished another book yesterday, audiobook of Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire, which is the 3rd book in the Wayward Children series. Because it's the 3rd book, I can't really talk about it that much, but the basic premise of the Wayward Children series is that it's based around a school for children and teenagers who have been to other worlds and have been expelled by those worlds and are trying to settle back into our world and are hoping for their doorways to open again to take them back to the places that they consider to be home. And this is the 3rd one, and I've given it 5 stars like I've given the others. I just adore this series so much. Like, on the surface it shouldn't really appeal to me because it's very lyrical and it's very fantastical and all the things that I would usually, you know, not really be into. But there's just something about this writing that's just beautiful. And this one is set in a nonsense world where everything is made out of sweets. And it's just lovely. And there's some amazing rep in all of these novellas. You know, there's fat rep, there's POC rep, there's a trans character. There's just a lot, and it's a lot about, you know, being yourself, accepting yourself, and I just love the messages in these books. And yeah, I had a fantastic time listening to it and gave it 5 stars, and I would very, very much recommend it. Today is the 19th of November, and last night I finished my reread for the month, which was The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. This is a gothic it's a gothic story, gothic historical fiction. I was trying to think of how to describe it without giving major spoilers. I read this last year. I think it came out last year or the year before. I read it in one sitting last year and it absolutely terrified me. And so I decided to put it into my reread pile for this year because I've seen a few people on Booktube and sort of in the book community. Apparently it's a bit of a Marmite book, so I kind of wanted to reread it and see if maybe I've just got caught up in the hype of it the first time around, but I haven't. I've still given it 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. So we're following 2 timelines. We're following Elsie. Yes, I literally finished this last night. I don't know what's wrong with my brain at the moment. We're following Elsie in the 1800s. She has just got married and is pregnant, and then her husband goes to his country mansion to basically open it for her to get ready for her and the baby. There's an accident and he dies, so it opens with her basically as a widow on her way to his funeral in the country. And then we're also following another mistress of the same house 200 years before, getting ready for the visit of King James, I think it is. It's just before the revolution. Is it the revolution? No, the Civil War. God, sorry. So we're following 2 timelines, and at the centre of the story are these silent companions, which Elsie finds in the attic in the 1800s, and they're basically wooden figures that are made to look like real people. And stuff happens. Stuff goes down. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I definitely picked things up on reread that I hadn't noticed the first time, because once you know once you've read it and you know what's happening, when you then reread it and go back, you kind of see signs like way before you do the first time. So from about 30 pages in, I was getting genuine like, oh, this is scary. I think I've said in maybe my last wrap up that I've been looking for books that give me like genuine chills, and this is a really good one in my opinion. I just think it's so well written, it's really atmospheric, things build slowly, you're not sure if Elsie's an unreliable narrator or if there's stuff happening. I can see why some people might be annoyed by the end, which is something that I've seen in other reviews. I personally love the end and I think it fits perfectly with the type of novel that this is, but I can see why some people might be annoyed by it. It's got vibes of like Rebecca, The Woman in Black, The Turn of the Screw, just that whole kind of just gothic, like Jane Eyre as well. So if you liked any of those and you like a scary story, I would really recommend this. If you're worried about being scared, just read it in the daytime. I made the mistake last time and this time round of constantly reading this in the evening when it was dark. The first time I read this, like I said, I read it in one go, and I decided I couldn't put it down, and so I stayed up after Gary had gone to bed to finish reading it, which obviously meant that when I'd finished, the house was dark. I couldn't turn any lights on because I didn't want to wake him up, and I have never moved so fast in my entire life to get up the stairs and into bed because I was genuinely scared of what might come out of the dark at me. So yeah, if you don't like being scared, maybe just read it in the daytime because it's definitely worth reading. If you like historical fiction, it's really good. If you don't like historical fiction, it's not like, the language is modern, it's not difficult to read, it's very fast paced, the chapters are short. So yeah, basically I had a brilliant time. I really enjoyed it. I feel like it's one I'm going to read every year. I probably need to get a hardback copy because I've read this twice now, and I don't know if you can see that the spine is completely cracked and like this is bent up here. Like I said before, I'm quite hard on books when I read them, so I might get myself a hardback copy. Although I do love this cover, and it's really creepy. Can you see those little figures in the windows? Yeah. Whew. Thoroughly enjoyed it. 5 stars.
It is the 27th of November, and as you can see, I've had my hair chopped off. Had my hair cut yesterday. So yeah. Feels very short, but I love it. As you can also probably see behind me, I'm filming today. I've got a day off, and I've actually got 2 books I need to talk to you about. So I've not had the best mental health time in November, and I just haven't really felt like talking to the camera. So I've actually got 2 books to talk to you about that I finished in the last week or 10 days. The first one of those was American Predator by Maureen Callahan. I think I've said that correctly. I read this on Scribed. And basically it tells the story of a guy called Israel Keyes, who they think could be America's most prolific serial killer, and he's probably one you've never heard of. And that's kind of all I can really say about it. It's true crime. I found it really interesting. It's obviously graphic because it's talking about his activities as a serial killer and the things that he did. I found it particularly interesting because I love the psychology side of true crime, and Israel Keyes is a really interesting subject in that regard. Obviously a completely awful and evil human, but really fascinating in the way that his psychology worked and the lengths that he went to not get discovered. So yeah, if you're into true crime and you've got the stomach for that kind of thing, I would really recommend it. I gave it 4 stars rather than 5, only because parts of it were a little bit slow for me, but overall I did really enjoy it. And then the second book is All That Remains, A Life in Death by Sue Black, which I buddy read with Simone and Nicole, and as usual had a really great time buddy reading with them. This is again a non-fiction, and it's basically about Sue Black's work. She is I always want to try and get this right, she's a professor of anatomy and forensic anthropology, so she works with dead bodies, and this is a mixture of memoir and non-fiction and fact, and she talks a lot about death, the process of dying, and then also her own experience with it, people she's loved that have died and the effect it's had on her life. She also talks about trips to Kosovo that she made in the 90s to help retrieve bodies that had been caught up in the war there. And yeah, I found this a lot more emotionally difficult than I was expecting. It made me cry a couple of times. I think if you have recently lost somebody, this might not be the book to pick up straight away. I've given it 4 stars just because parts of it do feel a little bit dry, and it feels more like a series of essays rather than like one overarching narrative. But I did really enjoy it. I had a great time reading with Simone and Nicole, as always, and if you're able to handle the subject matter of this, I would really recommend it. It's the 28th of November, as you can see, I am cooking dinner, but whilst I was cooking, I've just finished my next book for the month, which is the Vanishing season by Hutchison. So this is book 4, I'm trying to get to a bit where the lighting doesn't look too awful. This is book 4 in a series that starts with The Butterfly Garden, which I read last year. It's 4 books long, the series so far. I can't see there's any plans for a 5th one, so I think this is the last in the series, and I've had a bit of a mixed bag with this series. The first book I gave 5 stars, so it was excellent. We're following a girl who is kidnapped by a serial killer and held along with a bunch of other girls, and it's pretty grim, but it's really interesting. The second book I thought was really confused, and I gave it 2 stars. The third book, or you can hear the cat moving on the chair, the third book was kind of nearer the standard of the first book, and now this last one I've absolutely adored and given it 5 stars. So overall I would recommend the series. They're all on Scribe, so if you've got that service you can listen to all of them as part of your subscription. I've listened to this is the only one I've listened to on audio. I think, or did I listen to the last one on audio? I can't remember. Anyway, I've listened to this one on audio, which I would really recommend. The narrator was really good. In this one, we're following the team as they try and find an 8-year-old girl who has been taken, and they gradually realise that the person that's taken her has done this before. And it also links into the other cases in the series because they're all connected via the FBI agents that are trying to solve the cases. And yeah, it was really good. It's got a lot of heart to it, and I couldn't find anything wrong with it, so I'm going to give it 5 stars. If you like that kind of thing, I would recommend it. It's not overly gory, so if you're maybe looking to get into that kind of book, it would probably be a good one. Although there are obviously horrible things that happen in it, but it's not like massively explicit or gory. Anyway, those are my rather rambly thoughts on a Thursday evening about this book, which I gave 5 stars. It's the 29th of November and we're actually off to the Pig for lunch, which is why I've got my diamond earrings in today. Last night I finished my next read for the month, which was Rose Madder by Stephen King. Now, I've got kind of a mixed history with Stephen King books. So I DNF'd Cujo, It, Pet Sematary. There's another one that I can never remember. Salem's Lot. I DNF'd those because I just could not get into them. But then I've also given 5 stars to Misery and Carrie, and I think I gave 4 or 5 stars to Dolores Claiborne. I always want to say Dolores Umbridge. Claiborne, earlier in the year. So yeah, I have a very mixed reading history with him. This one was sent to me by my friend Steph, and I think I've reached the end of my Stephen King journey, to be honest. So this one, we follow a woman called Rose who is in a horrifically abusive marriage with her husband Norman. One day, and this is not a spoiler because it's on the back, one day she basically leaves him, she runs away. And it's a dual perspective novel. We get her perspective of things, but we also get his, and I think his perspective is the reason why I had such so many problems with this book, because he is just easily the worst character I've ever read from. And weirdly, because I've read from like serial killer points of view and things before and not really had an issue, there was just something about him that I just couldn't stomach. I need to give warnings for racist language, homophobic language, sexist language. It's incredibly violent. There is rape, there's murder, there's discussions around or allusions to childhood abuse. It's just awful. I think if it had just been the Rose sections, I would probably have given this 4 or 5 stars, and it was her sections that kept pulling me through, but his sections I really struggled with, and it was just too much. And also there was quite a lot of repetition because we would get something from her perspective and then it would flip back to his, and then the same thing would happen again through his eyes. And yeah, I've given it 2 stars. I finished it just through sheer like force of will, and because I was enjoying the Rose sections, but the Norman sections are really long and it was just too much being in his head. So yeah, I've given it 2 stars, and I think for me, I'm done with Stephen King now. It's the 30th of November, and as you can probably see from my face and hearing my voice, I am starting to cold. However, I finished my last read for the month, which is, oh, the wrong way around, smooth as ever, Are We All Lemmings and Snowflakes by Holly Bourne. So, you will have seen this video. If you saw my birthday vlog, then you will have seen this was sent to me by my wonderful friend Nicole from Booktube House of Books for my birthday, and I finally read it. Started it yesterday, finished it today, and I can see why she sent it to me. It's wonderful. It's based around a girl called Olive who has an undiagnosed mental illness, and she goes to this experimental treatment place called Camp Reset, where a load of teenagers basically are put together and they have like various different therapies, and it's all based around trying to help them to manage their mental illness and find ways to feel better. And yeah, there's really good rep. There is a lot of varied representation, a lot of which I can't speak to, but we've got characters who have OCD, we have characters who have depression, anxiety, a few kind of people who don't really have a specific diagnosis, which was really interesting. What I found interesting was like it talks about the different types of those illnesses. So there are a couple of characters who got OCD, but their OCD is very different to each other, and I feel like that's really, really important to have represented, because OCD, like any mental illness, is not just a one-fits-all kind of label, and so I love the way that was dealt with in the book. Olive herself is a very complicated character. I did like her, and what I really liked was the way her mental illness is shown. So she doesn't, I don't want to give spoilers for the book, she doesn't want to know what her, I'm going to put this down, she didn't want to know herself what her label was because she didn't want to be defined by it, which is something that I would really identify with, and definitely my younger self felt like that. And so throughout the book she's kind of resistant to that, but you as the reader can see her moods changing, and sometimes she's all the way up and she's quite manic and her thoughts are scattered and are everywhere, and she's kind of pinballing off one idea and then another and she's not really sleeping, and you know that she's like exercising a lot and it's all, you know, way up here, and then other times she's right down in the slump and she can't get out of bed and she doesn't want to see anybody and she doesn't want to take a shower and all that kind of stuff. So you as the reader probably have a fair idea of what her diagnosis is going to end up being, and I felt like that was done really well. The anxiety rep I can speak to because, as we all know, I struggle with that, and it's good. It's really good rep for that. Nicole has told me that the OCD rep is also good in it, and as always, Holly Bourne just handles the whole thing with so much care and respect and sense of humour. And yeah, I just think it's fab. It's just one of those books that, again, like I say with all of Holly Bourne's books, I wish these had been around when I was like 14, 15. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. I've given it 4 stars rather than 5, only because the plot goes, I think it went a little bit baggy in a couple of places, and there are a couple of things I could have done without happening, which I won't say because of spoilers, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I still think it's a really, really important book, and if you're looking for mental health rep, as always with Holly Bourne, this was a real good one. And those are all the books that I read in the month of November, 11 books, which is pretty good. With other wrap-ups, I've kind of set my, I was going to say camera, but I record on my phone. I've set everything up and sat in front of my bookcases for like the wrap-up of the wrap-up. But this is supposed to be vlog style, and to be honest, I don't really feel like it today. So we're just going to do it quick and dirty, vlog style. Yeah, so I read 11 books, which total, so I got my notebook down here, how many pages was that? 3,841 pages, so that is a good reading month. Also means that I'm on track for 150 books this year, as long as I read 9 books next month, which should be doable, especially with Christmas. So that's great. In terms of ratings, I had an average of 4.09, so again, it's been a good reading month. In general, it's been kind of a weird month. I do struggle with the change in clocks and it being dark and stuff like that, so it's been a bit stressful that way, but overall it's not been too bad. We've had Charlie's 10th birthday, which is amazing. I had a nice week off this week and I'm excited for Christmas. I flipping love Christmas, so I'm excited for that coming. We're getting our tree next weekend, so that will be all over my Bookstagram account. I'm not even a tiny bit sorry about that. And I've got 7 more videos coming for you in December. So I hope you enjoy those, because that's a lot more of my face than you guys are used to. So yeah, drop me a comment below. Let me know if you've got this far. If you've got this far and actually watched this all the way through, which I don't think many people do, leave me a book emoji just to let me know that you made it to the end. And I will see you very shortly in the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.